What's up, y'all? Hey, hope you guys are having a great summer, and a lot of crazy stuff happened in the past week, right? And including yesterday, Biden came out with a big plan to put rent restrictions in place across the country as a federal law. And so I've been getting messages all morning, and text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram messages. From people and phone calls saying, hey, what's going on? What are your thoughts on this and all this other stuff? So let me give you a quick backstory about what Biden proposed, why he proposed it, and what the big issue is of why this is even something that we're talking about, and finally, like, how to overcome it no matter what, regardless of what direction it goes in. So first of all, Biden proposed rent restrictions across the entire country, that you cannot increase rent by more than 5%. Now, this is for any, and there's essentially three bullet points to this. One is you cannot increase rent by 5% or more annually. Otherwise, you're going to lose a bunch of government tax credits and tax advantages. They didn't really go into exactly what that is, whether that's 1031 exchanges, cost segregation, and accelerated depreciation. There's green housing tax credits and some other stuff that you can get through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and HUD and stuff like that. So they didn't really dive into that, but that is one thing that they talked about. So anybody with rental properties, you cannot increase over 5%. However, that's limited to people with over 50 units. So that's not really clear either, because I have every single different building of mine is a different entity. It's owned by a different entity. And so is it per entity of 50 units or more? Is it per individual? How much ownership does that individual have to have in order to restrict rents on that property itself? What does all that look like? So again, not total clarity, but allegedly all owners with 50 units or more is who this affects. And the third one is there's no cap to new construction. So if you're building new construction, there's no cap on how much you can increase the rents. But they didn't go back, hey, over the past 2 years, 3 years, moving forward, starting in 2024, 2025, what does that all look like? So there's a lot of question marks around it, but those are the main things. Anybody with 50 units or more can't raise rents by more than 5% per year. Otherwise, you lose some tax advantages and tax benefits on that property, which aren't fully disclosed yet, and it doesn't affect anybody who's building new construction. So, like, why are we even talking about this? Why is this even relevant? And then I want to go back to whether or not this thing will pass and what that looks like. So why is it relevant? The reason it's relevant is because the U.S. housing of total dwelling units needs about 1 million units per year in order to keep up with the demand, right? So demand comes from population growth, which essentially comes from people being born, right? Babies being born, and immigration to that location. The U.S. currently has a deficit of 3.2 million housing units. That's all housing units. That's apartments, townhomes, single-family homes, mobile homes, anywhere where somebody would live. We are short by about 3.2 million housing units. And we need 1 million a year in order to keep up with that. Right now, there's a lot of housing stock coming online in 2024 and 2025 of stuff that was started around COVID time, just after COVID, just before COVID, and all these units coming online. So it's not a big issue other than, there's a deficit right now. But looking forward, all these builders have been pencils down, right? On underwriting new deals, on banking new land, on buying new property to then develop and build more multifamily housing or single family housing, because interest rates started skyrocketing, insurance started skyrocketing, material costs started skyrocketing, labor costs skyrocketed, and all these things. There's all these variables that are all these unknowns of what direction they're going in. So nobody has been buying land, pulling permits, putting things in place in order to then develop and build new housing products that would be delivered in 2026, 2027, 2028. So there's this insane shortage of housing that's going to happen starting in 2026, 2027, 2028. Now, there's still builders who are building, but what they're building is all high-end, really, really nice stuff, right? The affordable housing is what has a huge constraint on it right now. So And the reason being is all these builders are like, you can't make any money if you're building affordable single family homes or multifamily properties. Like, you can't build a multifamily apartment complex or even townhomes for less than $150,000 to $200,000 a door right now. And you can't build a single family home for less than about $300,000 a door. So everything that's coming online this year, next year, or over the course of the next couple of years, even though there might be a little bit of housing product, it's all higher end luxury stuff, $700,000 houses, $1 million houses, and super luxury apartments. So there's this insane constraint where there's going to be probably 5 million housing dwelling units of a shortage, maybe more, over the course of the next just 3 to 5 years. So that's spooking the hell out of everybody. I've seen a lot of big real estate influencers. I've talked to executives. The CFO of a publicly traded commercial real estate finance company is one of my neighbors, and spoke to a whole bunch of different mortgage brokers, sales brokers, lenders, debt fund lenders, mezz fund lenders, equity investors, like all these different high level $100 million, $1 billion type businesses that they run. And everybody's like, dude, the housing shortage is going to be insane starting in 2026. And what does that mean? That means that housing prices are going to go up because supply and demand, right? When there's more demand than there is supply, prices go up. And on the rental side, same exact thing, because if prices are going up on the housing, then people can't afford to buy a house, which means they have to rent, which means now there's more demand in the rental sector, which means, and there's no more supply in affordable rental housing. So those rents are all going to go up. And I've heard anywhere from 50 to 100% rent growth over the next 5 years alone. Think about that. 50 to 100% rent growth. So, and that's just talking about documented immigration and the birth rate and how population's growing there. When you start bringing in undocumented immigrants, the people who lost their paperwork, there's somewhere between 10 to 30 million other individuals in the United States right now who are not documented, they're not doctors and attorneys and a bunch of white collar professionals. These are people who are working labor jobs. They're cleaning, they're working in the food and bev sector, they're doing landscaping. It's lower income wages, which means they need more affordable housing, which puts an even greater strain on the affordable housing sector. So when you take a look at all of that, there's like this huge push for prices to grow like crazy on anything under a certain range. And I'm going to go over that in a minute. And then rents to grow on all this stuff as well. So going back to the Biden proposal of 5% per year rent growth cap, otherwise you lose your tax breaks. It's only for landlords 50 units or more, and new construction isn't affected. But new construction isn't doing anything anyways in that affordable housing sector. By the way, the other proposal the other thing that he suggested is the government give a bunch of National Forest Service and publicly owned national park land and all this other stuff to these local municipalities and tear down trees in order to then build more housing stock, which they need more supply of housing stock, right? But I don't know if that's the answer on that. So going back to Biden's proposal, like, why are there problems with it? Well, number one, the federal government controls interstate commerce, right? Of going from state to state over state lines, not inside of a state, right? So if you're a landlord and you own property in your own state, technically it's unconstitutional, where they have no friggin' right to tell you what you're doing. Can they put you in a headlock a little bit if you have Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or some sort of federal funding? Yeah, probably. There's probably something along those lines. But there's some constitutional debate on what they can do and what they cannot do. So, like, that's number one. Number two is that it's just what's the word? It shifts all the responsibility over to these landlords, right? It makes landlords take on, and a certain sector of population take on all the liability without counterbalancing that liability in any capacity. Meaning, I'm a landlord, right? And so I own some rental property, and my labor cost has gone up considerably in the past 4 or 5 years on all labor force, right? And my property management expenses have all increased. Maintenance has gone up because the supply chain and everything's more expensive there. My insurance in some of my properties, like I have a property in I have a couple properties along the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic coast. Those properties have either doubled or tripled, almost quadrupled in cost for my insurance over the past 3 years alone. Right? And so all these different things, the government goes and prints $10 trillion and then says it's your fault and my fault, and we have to then go and suck it up and eat their mess up and absorb all these additional increases in costs when we are just trying to, like, at the end of the day, the end consumer is the one who absorbs all these inflationary costs. So the entire idea of rent restrictions is just a bad idea. Like, we tried it in the 70s when there was crazy inflation going on, and it didn't work. Every study, every case study, every research study, all points to conclusive evidence that rent restrictions do not work, and they plain and simple. I just read an article on some rent restrictions in the UK in London, and the author and the economist who wrote this article essentially came to the point of the number one way to devastate a city and completely ruin it economically, outside of bombing that city, is putting rent restrictions in place. How about that for a bold statement? And you can see it. You go look at San Francisco. It's a friggin' debacle. It's absolutely destructive to what it does. And the only way to fix this is for supply to meet the demand. Supply just has to come up. So everything the government should be doing is should be incentivizing developers and builders to go and build and create more supply. That's what it should be. Not putting additional restrictions on people and not counterbalancing those liabilities. So how do you hedge this inflation and capitalize potentially on what's going to happen in the market? And first of all, going back for a second, I don't think this Biden plan is going to go into effect. I think it has to be passed by Congress. It's not going to be seen as constitutional. There's going to be a whole bunch of changes if anything does get put into place. I just don't see it happening. I think the only reason he did it yesterday is because trying to divert attention from the RNC and all these people who had been watching Trump and try to get them talking about Biden, which he's effectively doing pretty well today. So that was their main plan. I think with dropping this whole thing yesterday, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But let's go back, just in case it does. Who cares if it does? Who cares if it doesn't? Here's what I would be doing. If I am you, with the information that I just shared, and this is what I am doing in my businesses right now, is the best hedge against inflation is owning rent-producing assets, dividend-producing assets, whether that's a dividend-producing equity in a company or real estate, property, like any sort of asset that derives some sort of dividend or rent, typically is the best hedge against inflation. So rental property is right up there, right? Probably number one. And with all the timing of where things are right now, I realize there's been some, rough waters and stuff in the multifamily sector. But if you can ride out the next 18 months, and if you can accumulate as many rental units as possible over the course of the next 18 months, I think you'd be sitting in a very, 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 and it's across the board, everybody I've talked to, and what we're seeing is across the board, if you can go out and buy assets, good assets, specifically single-family homes under $300,000 a door, and multifamily properties under, let's call it $150,000 per unit, and put fixed rate debt in place, I think you're going to be sitting in an unbelievable position in the next 3 to 5 years. Really, really, really solid situation, because they're not building multifamily under $150,000 a door right now or anywhere. And by the way, I build hundreds and hundreds of units and renovate hundreds of units, probably 500 units a year. And even with my pricing and my volume, we can't build townhomes and multifamily units for under about $125,000 to $150,000 a door. It's just not feasible. And so If you can go out and accumulate already existing housing, multifamily apartment complexes for $80,000 a door, even if you renovate it and throw granite countertops and all, you're in for $100,000 a door. Rents will increase to over $1,000 a month, which beats that 1% rule that you probably learned about early in your real estate career. And meaning the rent needs to be 1% of what your all-in cost is on that asset. And it puts you in such a great position. Not only that, but you have fixed rate debt in place. And hey, Tim, our rate's going to come down. I don't know. Citibank just released a statement that they think rates could drop by up to 200 basis points, which is 2 percentage points over the next 12 months alone. And it got a bunch of people excited. Will it happen? I don't know, because, and I don't really care, because I think 6 and 7% money is like unbelievably cheap money anyways, right? We got really spoiled over the past 15 years just because the economy sucked and the government had to keep rates down. But if you can get unlimited money at 6 or 7%, like, if I could, I would go and buy the world. I'd buy friggin' everything, So it's one of those things where rents are going to grow enough in order to offset whatever that cost is, but you want to standardize it. And whatever they're saying inflation is a bullshit number. We all know it's a lot more than that, and our spending power isn't nearly as strong as it was a few years ago. So let me give you a quick economic lesson on the dollar and how the dollar's been devalued. From 1960 to 1990, the dollar was devalued by 75%. 1960 to 1990. So what cost you $1 in 1960 to purchase cost you $4 in 1990 to purchase. Over the next 30 years, it was devalued by another 50%. So from 1990 to 2020, it was devalued, and what cost $4 over here now costs $8 in 2020. Then the government printed $10 trillion in 2 years, right? So you can only imagine how much it's going to be devalued. Let me explain what this looks like. If you would have bought a property in 1960 and you put fixed rate debt in place in 1960, that means that fixed rate debt was based on $1 in 1960, right? And it runs for 30 years until 1990. Let's call it a 30-year mortgage. But every year and every month and every year that you make a mortgage payment, the value of the dollars you're making the payment with are actually reduced, but you're getting a full $1 of reduction on your mortgage. So by the time you get to 1985, 1987, 1989, you're spending 25 cents to pay down a full $1 of your mortgage value on that property. Well, I want to pay it off sooner. You could. Peace of mind tells you maybe you could pay it off sooner, but from an economic standpoint, when inflation is going in the direction that it's going, and when you have an asset that is, or you have a loan, but it's backed by an asset that produces a dividend and produces rental income, dude, ride this thing out and use future cheaper dollars to pay down your mortgage expense. So I hope you go back and rewatch that, because I hope you conceptualize that. Because if you can go and buy a bunch of property today at today's dollars, realizing that the dollar is going to continue to get deflated year after year after year after year as they continue to print money, because we all know they're not going to stop now that they've printed as much as they have, and they're just going to keep on paying off people's college. They're going to be giving subsidies all over the place. Like, it's a common thing for them right now, and they're just going to keep on doing that. So it's going to keep happening. It's monopoly money, and it is what it is. That's how they buy votes, right? Like regardless of whether or not this passes, Biden's trying to go out and get votes by saying this to get a bunch of people who are stressed about their housing costs in order to go out and vote for him. Even though it won't get passed, that's what they do. That's what they propose. So all that stuff's happening right now, and the best thing you can do is go and accumulate assets and put fixed rate debt in place, and you will be wildly wealthy over the course of the next 10, 15 years, to the point where not only will you be set for life, your kids will be, and probably their kids will be as well. If you just buy and hold good properties at a reasonable basis, like I said, about single family under 300 is what I'd be looking at, and what I am looking at, and multifamily under $150,000 a door. And hey, you can go above that in some capacities if you're in a core area of of an area that's growing like crazy, a population's growing like crazy, maybe if it's a little bit newer, or bigger units. Like I have a property in Houston, Texas, that's 50% of it it's a 600 unit complex. 50% of it is 3 and 4 bedroom apartments. And when somebody can't afford a house, but they need 3 or 4 bedrooms to live in, guess where they're going? They're going to go to my apartment complex, which is flanked by a couple of schools, a high school and an elementary school, that has great amenities, has the largest variety of unit mix, has the largest units with 3 and 4 bedrooms, and the most square footage at the lowest price per square foot of anything in the area. And you know what that does? It fills us up. We're consistently at 95% plus occupancy. And when you're at 95+% occupancy, you can start bumping up the rents. And we think the rents are going to grow in that housing, in that complex of ours, by at least 30 to 50% over the next 3 to 5 years. So we're pretty pumped about it. And the key here is I own assets, and I have fixed rate debt in place on majority of my assets. There's a couple that have bridge loans, still fixed, but that we're working on refinancing this year. But go out and buy some assets. I have a few things that are out of state and other states that I don't own anything in as I consolidate my portfolio. So if you are looking, shoot me a message on DMs, and I have about 1,000 doors of my portfolio that I'm going to be selling in order to then continue developing and doing some other stuff in my own backyard of the Carolinas and Ohio, where I own where all my portfolio is and all my team is. So nothing against other states. I just believe there's efficiencies and scale if you buy all in one place. And for me, that's the Carolinas and that's Ohio. So I have stuff in Oklahoma, I have stuff in Texas, I have stuff in Louisiana, I have stuff in Illinois, and some other parts like in central Georgia that I'm going to be bringing to the market over the next 90 days or so. So DM me, I'll get you access to our disposition portal. You take a look at it. We're pretty easy to work with. Make me an offer. I'm willing to do terms. Like I'm easy on all that kind of stuff. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully you got some good insights into what Biden's talking about, why you should or should not be concerned about that, why it's all happening in the first place, and what you can do about it, right? Control the controllables. That's all that we can do, and all you can ask for. So there's always going to be crazy stuff that happens and curveballs that get thrown at us. Your job is to get good at hitting curveballs. So appreciate you guys. If you got any good takeaways, put it in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll make another video. Just put that in the comments too, and I'll do some more videos as things continue to progress over the course of the week. All right, appreciate y'all. Have a good day.